everyone. I'd like to thank CITT and Pina Malchioni for today, and specifically Miriam Bentumi for organizing and inviting me to speak at this session. She's done an excellent job and made it super easy for our speakers each step of the way. It's really not easy to navigate the changes to moving into the online space. Nowadays, diversity is an ever-pressing subject in society and the workplace. But how do we maximize human capital while balancing diversity, inclusion, and making sure everything in the workplace is sound going forward? In this short session, I hope to help you better understand diversity in the workplace, the unconscious and implicit biases that affect all of us, and what we can do about it. Today, I want to share with you 3 big ideas with practical steps on how to address diversity in the workplace. So, without further ado, let's get on to the very first point. My first point is that diversity is a real challenge, and it comes in many forms, some of them not so obvious. Maximizing human capital is essential to any workplace, and it's in the interest of everyone, from leadership to the employees, to figure things out. Many times people think of diversity as being the color of our skin, our country of origin, our ethnic culture, such as the food we eat, our accent, or whether or not we understand certain cultural cues or not. There's gender, there's age, there's sexual orientation. And yes, those are the relatively more obvious markers that are talked about in Canadian society today. But diversity is also more than what meets the eye. Interestingly, one of the most valid and reliable measures of diversity is personality diversity. And often you'll have more luck predicting the ballpark of how a person would behave or what they like or dislike at work or social events based on personality over factors such as ethnicity. So, for example, you would have far more luck guessing what an introvert would do during happy hour drinks versus an East Asian person or a female or someone in their 30s. Nowadays, the Big 5 personality traits are the gold standard for personality psychometrics, and it's related to leadership style, what type of work you'll enjoy, and how a team chemistry will generally unfold. And the science is generally clear on that, and it's not even close to a quick Google search. So here's the search term results based on the Big 5 personality traits with over 800,000 searches compared to the next search. Now, here's the search term results based on the 5-factor model, which is the Big 5 personality traits' official name, with over 600 million in search volume. And so it's not even close when we look at the literature. So just know that I'm talking about a fundamentally different mode of personality, in case you want to share with me what color of parachute you are or what type of bird you are, because the Big 5 personality traits uses a normative distribution. So personalities are on a continuum rather than sorted into types. People who take type-based tests would suddenly turn from an introvert to an extrovert after a week. This will not happen in the Big 5 personality traits. So what are the Big 5? The Big 5 personality traits is constituted of the acronym OCEAN. O stands for openness, and when we look at openness, we can understand it from the perspective of leaders versus managers. Leaders are typically seen as higher in openness, and managers are typically seen as those who like to stick with the tried and true. There's also trait conscientiousness, which is the highest predictor of achievement and income. People who are very conscientious tend to be able to focus and really hammer things out. People who are lower in trait conscientiousness are generally regarded as multitaskers who juggle many things in the workplace at the same time. The E in OCEAN stands for extroversion. And notice I didn't say extroverts, because extroversion is a continuum, right? Those who are lower in extroversion are introverts, while those who are higher are extroverts. And this is probably the one that most people are familiar with in terms of, extroverts being more socially warm, while those who are introverted tend to be just a little cooler, right? The A in OCEAN stands for trait agreeableness. And if you are high in agreeableness, then you tend to prioritize the group agenda more than the individual agenda. And those who are lower in agreeableness are stronger at pushing for their own agenda and their own goals, right? Typical problems that agreeable people would face would be setting boundaries and saying no, and just generally holding their own in the workplace, because there may be people in the workplace who would throw their weight around and make people uncomfortable. The last personality trait is trait neuroticism, which outlines a spectrum for those who could handle more stress versus others, right? So highly neurotic people would be a little bit more sensitive to stress, while people who are less neurotic could withstand more. And when you look at personality, there's really no right and wrong. As Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, each individual nature has its own beauty. And there are always situations where we want to leverage certain personality traits more than others. So for example, in trait openness, there are times where we want to stick with processes and KPIs, but there are also times where routines need to be re-innovated, and certain metrics may generally need to be ignored because change may render them meaningless. This is especially the case for new frontiers, where there simply isn't any data to justify spending or justify your energy. And I'm sure everyone listening right now has experienced an unprecedented change in supply chain and logistics in the last 9 months since COVID started. In other words, at the team level, we could learn to leverage each other's strengths and cover our blind spots. Some people are pre-wired to be more of a social butterfly, while others are pre-wired to be a little bit more sensitive to emotions. Everyone will be for the better when we're doing what we're naturally good at and passionate about, while also recognizing the contributions of people with different personalities from us. And for my own work, where I help people who feel stuck in their careers gain that clarity and make career transitions, finding that alignment of your personality with your career along with the soft skills to balance it out is essential. And this is the focus of my YouTube channel, Dr. John Tam, right, named after me. If you want to get a better understanding of your big 5 personality traits and understand what workplace characteristics is a better fit for you, I would recommend you to go to my website, drjohntam.com, to get a high-level read on your personality and what workplace traits are the best fit for you. So, to wrap up my first point, diversity comes in many forms. Some of them are obvious, while others are what Yale sociologist Nicholas Christakis calls how we are pre-wired. But how about post-wired? Well, obviously, your social life, culture, and experience has a lot to do with that. What language you speak, what cultural values you hold, what family structure you have. All of these come into play when it comes to leveraging strengths and covering blind spots to address market needs. The most recent example I can think of is Disney's Mulan in 2020, right? Which was supposed to be tailored to the Chinese market, but it failed spectacularly in epic proportions, both in terms of the box office and in terms of the culture, to the extent that the Chinese government decided to block all domestic press coverage of it. The failure of the movie, after a lot of analysis by many film critics, has been attributed to the fact that while the actors were all Chinese, no one on the back end really had a strong grasp of Chinese culture. And if you want to tap into the Chinese market with a movie about a historical figure with a genre that's original and appealing, you definitely need to have people who understand the culture in charge of executing the project, rather than imposing a pseudo-European medieval Star Wars script in ancient China. In other words, the importance of diversity cannot be overstated. From personality diversity to social cultural diversity to biological diversity, these are all essential to maximizing human capital in the workplace. And some of you may be thinking right now, okay, sure, John, we get it. We're in Canada and multiculturalism is a thing here. So then the next question really is, what gets in the way of the workplace in leveraging diversity? Which brings me to my next point, which is the neuroscience of implicit bias. So what does science say about implicit biases? Perhaps the most authoritative figure on this is Daniel Kahneman, the winner of the Nobel Prize for challenging the notion that humans are purely rational, but are instead driven and swayed by emotion and biases. He summarizes his ideas in his book Thinking Fast is Slow, where he outlines that we have a fast brain and a slow brain. One which he calls System 1, and the other, obviously, System 2. The fast brain is located in the densest regions of your brain that's closest to your brainstem and the spinal cord. And this whole region marks several parts of your brain where the reaction time is nearly instinctive and it's emotional. It's almost like an instantaneous reflex to stimuli. And this system kept us alive while we were still living in trees, when our biggest enemies were still the snakes. So for example, when we saw a branch that looks like a serpent in the dark, our natural reaction would have been to jump away. Any later may mean that we would have been eaten by the snake. In essence, what happens in the fast brain is that external stimuli will trigger an automatic script to tell us how to react. And this is literally how humans react to stimuli, right? Leading to things from stereotypes all the way to PTSD, where and in post-traumatic stress disorder, what happens is you hear fireworks, which leads to your body to feel like there's an explosion from a war that you were in once upon a time, and then the whole series of scripts will kick into play. And this is most apparent when COVID first started, and Canadians saw masked East Asians walking around. And sometimes when you don't know where these people are from, and their face are covered, and are they carrying pathogens? Have they just been to Asia? These are all things that make people worry. But from the Asian perspective, a lot of times, the face mask thing has been normalized since SARS in 2003. In fact, if you are in Asia, if you wear a mask, that means that you are trying to protect everyone, and it's considered a considerate thing to do. This norm didn't really pick up in Canada until the last few months. And even to this day, there are different opinions about the mask. But from the perspective of Asians, they've been doing it for almost 2 decades now. And this same mechanism of being afraid of people who are different from you, or people who are from a different background, who have their faces covered. You know, it's the same mechanism as back in the caveman days. Not mixing with neighboring tribes is a way you survive to keep pathogens outside of your current tribe. However, when you think about it, nowadays these protective mechanisms are much less needed in modern Canada. In other words, implicit bias is the automatic reaction from stimuli, whether it's skin color, it's an accent, it's a smell, or even trying to understand why an introvert, didn't really respond to your joke, or they're really cool. And in fact, oftentimes introverts, they like people, they just have a cooler response than normal. And these responses by people automatically trigger scripts of assumptions inside of you that, if unchecked, can manifest into behaviors that may be harmful. And so a very quick way to show that implicit biases exist is actually, you can go to the Harvard Implicit Association test, and I'll put it in the links, in the description here. And feel free to take it to get a better understanding of your biases towards race, ethnicity, gender, age, weight, sexuality, and countries. Now that we understand that implicit biases are quickly triggered in the fast brain, what about the role of the slow brain? The slow brain is located in the newest parts of our brain, which is the cerebral cortex, which is less dense and the biggest difference between the human brain from primates, because our evolutionary paths really developed in a way that our primate cousins evolved physically, while humans really just evolved more intellectually. The cerebral cortex is also the part where we use logic, language, culture, and understanding to solve problems. It is where humans grasp the concept of time to plan ahead rather than living day by day, meal by meal. It is also why when there's a branch that looks like a snake, your first reaction is like, oh, wait, it's a snake. And then you take pause, you stare at it a little longer, and then you make sense of it. And, you understand that, oh, wait, it's just a branch that looks like a snake. So essentially, knowledge and understanding clear things up. And so with that understanding of the slow brain, not surprisingly then, the way to deal with the fast brain is to leverage the slow one. And this type of fast brain versus slow brain action stays with us to this day. You actively experience it when you're trying to sleep with the lights off, and then you see a coat hanging in the dark, and you think, oh wait, is that a person standing there? And then you realize, like, oh, it's the coat that I hung there this afternoon. And so essentially the fast brain are scripted to protect us in a fast way. If you touch fire, it's going to burn you. If you see someone who's suspicious with their mask on, they're suspicious. You should probably keep a distance away. And therefore, the fast brain is filled with biases. On the other hand, the slow brain's job is to override the fast brain scripts. And needless to say, when they work together, that's the best situation. The problem is, it's far easier to use the fast brain because it requires much less energy. That is also why when you speak in a second language, you actually get tired really quickly, since you are using your slow brain to speak when you're speaking a second language. When you're speaking in your native tongue, you're using your heart language, and it's much more energy efficient. There's also a cultural dimension to the fast brain. For example, in China, introversion is widely regarded as the ideal leadership trait, while in the West, those who carry extroverted qualities are the ones who exhibit leadership, right? Another example can be found in physical communication. For those of us who know a bit about facial expressions, the Duchenne smile is regarded as being honest and friendly in the West. And some people have even made universal claims about it. So you can see a picture of the Duchenne smile here. However, did you know that someone who shows the same smile in parts of Asia, and South Asia in particular, could be regarded as disingenuous and even lower in intelligence? This is also why my mom to this day tells me to stop smiling like an idiot when we take family photos. She has the idea that the proper way to smile is to do this. While the Duchenne smile, which is regarded as universal and more sincere, is, you have to use this part, right? Your eyes have to have a little bit of folding here. Similarly, this also carries over into body language. And the best example I can think of is in India, right? There's the head bobble gesture. At different speeds, at different levels of enthusiasm, it may mean different things, from yes to acknowledging understanding, to respect, to not really agreeing, to disagreement. People who are unfamiliar with the head bobble would be confused by these signals, and this has implications for communication and advancement opportunities in the workplace for immigrants. The fact of the matter is that a lot of immigrants or other workers may not be familiar with these fast scripts that people may have internalized, and it may introduce a lot of miscues in the workplace, or show that immigrants lack certain soft skills, like they're not extroverted, or that they're not communicating properly. These are all things that we need to be mindful of, and that's why the main principle behind this is to use the slow brain to keep the fast brain in check, to educate yourself, to learn the fast brain cues so that you understand there are different ways of perceiving behavior. But how do we do that with the purpose of maximizing human capital and make where we spend most of our working lives a more enjoyable place? At the end of the day, the bottom line is trust. People trust those who are similar to themselves. So how do we build trust? Since every workplace is different, I don't want to give you a single prescriptive answer. However, I think there are some basic key principles that would help by using our understanding of the fast and slow brain. As established previously, the unfamiliar or the unknown makes people wary, triggering the fight, flight, or freeze mechanisms. The best way to conquer fear is with knowledge and familiarity. We used to be afraid of lions and bears, now they're in the zoo. Similarly, for my clients who go through a career change, one of the biggest things that's holding them back from a career transition is the fear that they're going to be ending up in a worse place than before. Therefore, the way to overcome that is with proper research, resulting in the knowledge that it's okay and safe to go ahead and make the change. In essence, our slow and fast brains need to be conditioned similarly as well. And here are some ways to go about it. The first thing you can do is to build trust by improving your social networks. At the individual level, you can do things like establishing meaningful mentorships, or fostering network through the chambers of commerce, or professional associations, or interdepartmental or divisional connections. There's also something called weak ties and strong ties, and this is established by the Stanford sociologist Mark Granovetter in the 70s, that oftentimes we rely on strong ties, and strong ties are people who we see often and we share the same networks. But in fact, one of the best ways to advance in a workplace is to foster weak ties and to build and nurture these weak ties. Because with weak ties, you don't share the same networks. You see each other once in a while and you exchange information, and basically what you see, what you experience is different, and therefore you receive more diverse opinions and you also broaden your network. The second thing you can do is to build trust by improving the working culture. Public or private organizations should provide more training opportunities to develop competencies for diversity management and leadership. And you should also encourage workforces, or at the minimum, hiring managers and supervisors to learn more about unconscious biases and implicit associations. Economic models have shown that this would lead to increased productivity and better retention in the long run. The third thing you can do is to improve the community's social trust. And one of the ways you can do that is by encouraging meaningful interactions. Other things such as cultural education performed in a non-patronizing and non-commodifying manner helps as well. And at the end of the day, trust is ultimately about feelings. Feeling safe and secure to share your thoughts and feelings. And also having the feeling that someone's got your back, even though they may not express it publicly. I want to share a tool that's designed by my friend Ray Kanani, who's head of product at Intellect. And he created a platform to destigmatize emotions in the workplace. The link is, I'll put the URL here, howwefeeling.com. And in fact, I want to invite you guys to join it right now. And I want you to enter this URL as we're going through this and about to enter the Q&A. I want you to state, what are your feelings about this talk? What are your feelings during the Q&A? And just experience what it's like to be able to communicate your feelings and focus on your emotions and really be able to experience sharing your emotions anonymously, so that other people would know, how you're feeling and so on. And if you're feeling great, awesome. If you're not feeling great, it's good to know as well. But at the end of the day, having people articulate their feelings in a safe place where other people can respond and provide their support is essential to growing trust in the workplace. And a platform like this allows people to crystallize their emotions when they articulate it in words, but it also allows the leaders to gauge the morale of the team. It prevents meeting room cascades where the leader says one thing and everyone pretty much has to agree with it because it's already been decided. If implemented correctly, leadership can also have the ability to listen, to validate, and do something about the emotions before it blows up in their faces, and essentially prevents them from being blindsided by certain emotions that's running in the workplace. How many times have you walked through the workplace and someone's asking you, hey, how you doing? And you're saying like, great, when inside you're literally not feeling great, right? You just had a terrible interaction with someone in the elevator, or something's happening at home or whatever, right? There could be a variety of reasons why you're not feeling great, and you're not able to articulate it in passing because someone's just asking you, hey, how you doing? And so the fact that there's a space for you to share how you feel and for leaders to see what's going on, you don't really need to know who it is. You just need to know that it's happening, and you won't be blindsided by things that are happening. So one example is you can put out, hey, how are we feeling about the setup? How are we feeling about how this conference is organized? How are we feeling about XYZ? And under the protection of anonymity, they would be able to tell the truth and say, hey, I think this is a waste of time, I don't understand this, or whatever. And these are good things to know if you're willing to deal with it head on. Of course, the worst thing you can do is to take the data and go on a witch hunt or ignore these emotions when they're shared, right? That's probably the worst thing you can do. So to wrap things up, diversity really is a challenge in the workplace, and there are many forms of it, from personality to culture to just individual quirks. And the basic principle is that we need to leverage our slow brains to keep our fast brains in check. And one of the best ways of doing that is to be deliberate in improving relationships and fostering trust at work. That's not patronizing, that's not commodifying. Or seek out other forms of development or tools like the one I introduced to you today to figure out ways on how to improve that trust. At the end of the day, diversity is hard work, but it can also be a very powerful source of strength. Thank you for your attention today, and I look forward to answering any questions you have.